Hi guys, welcome to the first video on the chapter Nationalism in India. We have divided this chapter into 5 topics. So the first topic is the First World War and Gandhi's ideology. So like nationalism in Europe had its root in the emergence of middle class, emergence of the liberal thinking that was there, and correlation with the Industrial Revolution. In India, the correlation was not with middle class, the emergence of middle class, liberal thinking. It was, on the other hand, with the anti-colonialism. So the Indians started unite when they were suppressed by the colonial powers. So this is what brought nationalism in India. Now, what triggered nationalism in India was during the First World War, situation had become quite dire. So you would see that because the World War was going on, British needed a lot of defense expenditure. So this was financed by the war loans. So what happens in war loans is that the British raised the custom duties for Indians, income tax was introduced, prices were doubled. So all this led to extreme hardships for the common people. So this was the case that actually triggered villages had to supply soldiers to the British army. So in 1819 and 21, crop also failed in many parts. So all these factors combined triggered the nationalism in India because everyone started to feel the impact of the colonial powers. Because before this, it was like we were ruled by the Indian rulers, now we are being ruled by British rulers. This was the trigger point. Now, here, just after Gandhi's ideology, just after the First World War and during the First World War, the important person or the key to the puzzle was Gandhi. Now, Gandhi had a very simple ideology. His case was very simple, that if we are fighting for justice, we don't need violence. So, his mentality was, if you are being suppressed, if your struggle was against injustice, then physical force was not necessary to fight the oppressor. So the battle could be won through non-violence. This was his ideology. And what had to be done was, we had to appeal to the conscience of the oppressor. So he had a very famous statement as well, that when you are hit on the cheeks, you should show the other cheek. So this was his mentality, that we don't need violence to fight injustice. Now, people just had to be persuaded to see the truth. This was his thinking, that if you show them the truth, the dark side of them, then they will listen to you, and actually the truth was bound to ultimately triumph. So this was the ideology of Gandhi, and these were the aspects that he had laid out bare for everyone to know. And the people across the country started gathering momentum based on this ideology because of the initial satyagrahas and their success. So Gandhi had quite a lot of success with the initial satyagrahas, which was the first satyagraha in Champaran, Bihar. So what had happened in Bihar was that the peasants were struggling, and Gandhi supported them against the oppressive plantation system using his famous ideology, and had got great success. So it worked in Champaran, then it also worked in Kheda district of Gujarat, when in revenue collection they got relaxation for the peasants. So again it worked. Then in Ahmedabad against the mill workers also it worked. So these 3 satyagrahas created a lot of buzz around the country about this new person on the block, Gandhi, who had brought great success without any violence. Now, around this time, when Gandhi was gaining momentum and his ideology was gaining momentum, a new act was introduced by the government called Rowlatt Act. Now, Rowlatt Act was an act that gave government immense powers. So what was happening, that the government could repress any political activity in the country, and they allowed detention of political prisoners without a trial. So no evidence is needed. Without trial, you can detain a political prisoner for 2 years. So this was the points in the Rowlatt Act, and when it was passed, it was rejected and opposed by the Indian council members, but still it got passed, and this led to widespread agitation. So Gandhi rallied and organized a lot of rallies in various cities. Then he asked the workers to go on strikes, which they did. So in railway workshops as well, there were strikes. Shops were being closed down. So this was being done. On the other hand, when the government started seeing all this, the government clamped down on these activities. So what was happening was that the local leaders in Amritsar were picked up. Mahatma Gandhi was barred from entering Delhi. So such things were being done. Police fired upon a peaceful protest in Amritsar, which we'll talk about, and martial law was imposed. So these were the things that the government was doing to suppress this movement against Rowlatt Act. Now, the famous incident after Rowlatt Act was the Jallianwala Bagh incident. So it was a terrible moment in our history where almost 900 people died, villagers died. In fact, they were unarmed villagers who had just come out to go to a fair because they didn't know that martial law was imposed. So unaware that martial law was imposed, they gathered around in Jallianwala Bagh, a garden, and to attend a fair. So General Dyer, the military general of British at that Indian British, blocked the exit and fired upon hundreds of villagers who were unarmed. So this was a very dark moment in the history of the country when unarmed villagers were fired upon. Now, people's response to this was quite violent because it hurt the sentiments of a lot of people, and we had various strikes and clashes with the police. There was attack on government buildings. The government also responded with satyagrahis being forced to rub noses on the ground and crawl on streets. People were beaten, villages were bombed. So all this was leading to a lot of violence which Mahatma Gandhi was against. So Gandhiji was seeing a lot of violence, and hence he called off the movement against Rowlatt Act. So this is about topic 1. In the next topic, we'll be discussing the non-cooperation movement. Thank you so much.